Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesday. It is November 30th, the last day of the month for 2022 in November. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. For those people on Zoom, if you'd like to, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just put your questions into the chat window. We'll get those answered for you at the end of the presentation. For those watching on Facebook, any questions you've got, you're welcome to put those into the comment field. We are monitoring that feed. Also, for those on Zoom, if you'd like to connect with other people who are on the call today, please put in your contact information. It's a great way to reach out to everybody else who's on the call, expand your LinkedIn connections, because you never know who else you can help. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me, I always have copies with me in person. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Remember, your LinkedIn profile and your resume aren't going to get you a job. They get you a phone call. How well you practice your interviewing skills, that's what's going to get you your next job. And you'll hear more about the practice interview team in just a moment. Well, to get started here, we'd like to ask Walt to tell us a little about the Interview Success Workshop. Good afternoon, Walt.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Interviewing. You know, we have to practice and prepare interviews on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, every day. Seems like we need to put some time into job search. The Pit Crew offers a great service, and you'll hear more details about that, and I heartily recommend it. But I also recommend that you take my Interview Success Workshop. It's free. And what does it really do? And what's the difference between it and the Pit Crew? Well, it is not a mock interview in the workshop. I mean, yes, you will get an interview. You'll get a video of your interview. You'll get several handouts. And included in that is a video that goes over a major handout that covers a lot of the things that we talk about during the interview process itself. You interview each other if there's two of you. And I take notes. We cover the 12 basic categories of questions. So it's not smooth, it's kind of choppy. But we're looking at strategies, options, structures, ways that we might answer a question, depending on the question, who's asking, and where you are in the process. So what is it really trying to do? Well, we want to sell three elements that companies are buying, and that's who we are, what we do, and how we can help, as well as differentiate ourselves from other candidates. So that's what the interview focuses on responding in such a way to sell those three elements. The I do is pretty much covered in most interviews. In fact, it's a majority of the interview. There's a little bit I see on the I am side, our personal traits and characteristics, and I see very little on the I help side, which is really the reason they're hiring us, to accomplish certain things. There's something that's going on, either there's some issues or problems and challenges, or there's some growth or whatever it might be. They're looking for you to use yourself, the I am, and what you do to combine those to help the organization achieve certain goals and objectives. So that's what it's focused on. You have to be registered to attend. Look me up on LinkedIn, on Walt Glass, and my about section is about the workshop. The QR code you see on the screen is a way I'm trying to make it easier for you to register. That'll start an email. You just need to edit a couple of things in the email, take my signature out, for example, and put yours in. Include your phone number and your signature. Always suggest that you do that. Make it easy for me to connect or contact you. So just send me that email. I'll give you some availability dates when we can have it. I only do 1 or 2 people at a time. Once we offer the basic fundamentals, if you want to come back and do more of a regular interview with questions from your job description and resume, we can do that. I only do those one person at a time. And it's kind of like question, response, discussion, question, response, discussion. So it really is, that's the workshop part of it. Be glad to have you participate. This is not a situation where you've got to see your life flashing in front of your eyes. This is not a situation where you have to feel anxiety and stress. And so the workshop, the motto is learning without squirming.
Walt, thank you very, very much. All right, it's time to hear about the pit crew. Good afternoon, Ron. Oh, Ron, you're muted.
How about this? Is this better?
There we go.
Okay. I'm going to give a rousing endorsement of Walt Glass's class. I myself took it in 2018, and there's a little note that I have here that says, I am, I do, I help. This has been on my monitor since 2018, whether or not I was being interviewed, or even as a hiring manager, whether or not I was interviewing somebody else. So I can give a rousing endorsement of Walt's class from that perspective. Now, okay, back to the pit crew. I've been involved with the pit crew since 2018 when I was looking for a job, and took about 2 years out while I was finishing up my career. I retired in March. And so let's talk about the pit crew for a minute. Walt is a learning without squirming. The pit crew is where you're actually doing a mock interview. Okay, so you are going to need a job description and a resume from you so that we know how to prepare as interviewers to interview for you. Okay, just like Walt said, our cost is sky high. Matter of fact, it's so sky high, it's free. So there's no cost to do these interviews. You can do them as many times as you want. One of our recommendations is practice early and practice often. All of the people that you will be interviewed by either currently are or have been hiring managers from that perspective. We also, like I said, in order to get an interview, we need your resume and a job description. Give us a minimum of 2 to 3 business days to go ahead and get the team together to volunteer, because we are an all volunteer group from that perspective. As it says on the screen, you email that to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and there's a phone number if you need to reach me from that perspective. As Walt said, we do also offer one-on-one coaching free of charge, and we do one-way interviews. Walt and Jeff will talk about that in a minute, but those are where you're just talking to a computer screen. They're becoming more prevalent, and they do take a little learning to get kind of used to. When we started today, I put the link to a document online, which will give you a summary of all of the videos that we've been talking about and where to go get those files. We're always looking for volunteers. If you've been a hiring manager, and if you have time to assist us, we're always looking for those volunteers. Just send an email to the address over there. And so that's the Dallas Pit Crew. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If you'd like to schedule a one-way interview, as Ron was talking about, this is where it's just you and the computer, you talking to your camera on your computer. If you'd like to do that, just send a request to Walt Glass or myself, and we will get you scheduled. I think Ron also has an email address, so you can also send it to Ron, send it to the Dallas Pit Crew, and they'll be able to do it. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
I'm also going to be putting something in the chat window as we look at next year and kind of what we're going to be offering. I'm kind of taking polls as to where people are sitting as they come attend these. So you'll see I'm going to put some answers in the window. I would like you to put whether or not you're in the DFW area east of 35, the DFW area west of 35, if you're somewhere in Texas, but not those, or if you're out of Texas. So I will put that in the chat window. If you could just, each of you, give me an answer to those, that's going to help us understand what kind of services we may be looking at as we move into 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. So if you'd like to schedule it one-way interview, you're welcome to do so. It's you and the computer only. And what we will do is you'll get a link, you follow the link, you do the interview, we get notified you've completed the interview. We'll then send you that link so that you can go back and watch it. We won't watch it. It's just for you to be able to practice and you to do it. So if you're interested, reach out to Walt or myself. All right, well, today we're going to talk about information interviews, how to network effectively, different types of referrals, active listening, converting contacts into connections, supporters, champions, and advocates, and how to use information interview to shorten the job search. So our speakers today are Mark McDonald and Walt Glass. This is a recorded presentation, so it lasts about an hour and 10 minutes. We'll answer any questions you have at the end of the presentation. So we will get it started right now.
All right, so this is a very busy slide, but this is the whole picture. And one of the things that occurs to me, well, for for quite a while, for 2 or 3 years at least, I have been trying to figure out why people don't avail themselves of informational interviews more often. And you know, somebody's asked a question, it's kind of difficult for them, and certainly they can be challenging. Walt's going to, you know, take you through all the steps, but I wanted to, at a very high level, you know, explain the motivation behind informational interviews. And they may still be a little bit tricky for you, but the payoff is tremendous. And so that's what this next few slides talk about. So you'll see on these slides a little green car. That's you, the race driver, and the pit crew. And we're going to take you around this circle, and along the way, we're going to talk about informational interviews and a very small about networking and target companies. Then we're going to talk about the benefit you get over here on the other side when it comes time to apply for the job, and what happens with the black hole and becoming a preferred candidate and having more effective interviews as a result of your informational interviewing. One thing I want to cover on this slide is, I always keep in mind, I think this is a good statistic. Right here, this text right here, job posting statistics. So this is for jobs that are posted. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk about the hidden job market and tell you how big it is. But for suffice it for now, it's several times bigger. The hidden job market is several times bigger than the posted job market. Okay, so all these numbers get expanded when you start considering the hidden job market. But for posted jobs, 30% of them are filled internally. And if you've been in the job search for a while, you've probably encountered this, where the recruiter or the HR person lets you know that the internal candidate filled the role. So that's not your imagination, that's a thing. A large number of job postings eventually become filled by internal candidates. And the data that I got this from was like 30%, so a little bit less than 1/3. Now, the interesting thing is 40% of job postings are filled by internal recruiters. These are recruiters who work for the company using their first and second degree connections. So this is people who they've talked to themselves, maybe on the phone, maybe face-to-face, but also second degree referrals to the recruiter, which is an employee who brings someone forward as a good candidate for a position. So that's 40% of the posted jobs. And then another 10% of the posted jobs are filled by the internal recruiter from their applicant tracking system or from a database like LinkedIn, whatever they use, but a database, you know, and this is where your information goes, the applicant tracking system black hole, we call it, because you have about a 2% chance of being contacted if that's all you do is apply and put your information into the database. But a fair number of placements do originate or end up coming out of that black hole. It's just pretty low probability that you, among the other 100 or 150 applicants for a particular job, get the call and even get an opportunity to participate in the interviews. And then about 20% are filled by agency recruiters. These are recruiters outside of the company, and they have their similar techniques. Their first and second degree connections in their own. Some of them have their own databases. And so now if you take out the ones that are filled internally, right? If you just remove those, what this is about 2/3 of job postings are filled by internal recruiters, by company recruiters. And so it's important to get inside a company, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so one of your goals of networking is to find the hidden job market. So when you meet people, you're going to introduce yourself. You may use your elevator story, and so I call those contacts. They're just people you've met. Maybe a large number of the people you know on LinkedIn, you don't know that well. They're just contacts. You don't know if they'd be willing to help you or not. You meet a lot of people. You're going to find some people, though, that you kind of naturally have a connection with. You may have something in common. They may be people from your church. They may be people in your children's activities. They may be the book club. They may be things that you do. And people who have a connection with you, something in common, are more willing to help you. It's just the way it is, okay? And there's kind of different strengths in this because, connections or champions or supporters, they all basically mean the same thing. But over time, you can nurture those connections and they become even stronger and stronger. I mean, so they really begin to work for you, right? They really want to help you find a job because you have this thing in common. You've built up some rapport. And so you have to go through a lot of contacts to, find a fair number of connections who will help you out. But the payoff's pretty big. Those kinds of connections give you access to the hidden job market. I want to use this slide to talk about how big the hidden job market is. Best I can tell, and you'll see widely varying numbers, the best I can tell, it's about 3 times the size of the posted job market. And let me just give you an example, a couple of examples. But in one example, the first one here is from my background, and we typically had a calendar year financial planning year. In September, we would start planning for the next year, and of course, part of that planning was how many new people we're going to hire. And so we might put together a plan, and all these plans are contingent upon continued financial performance, right? So we put together a plan for the next year. And so let's say decided we were going to grow the engineering team. And so the first quarter we'd hire 3, second 3, we'd hire 12 new engineers next year, 3 per quarter, contingent upon continuing to do well, right? If the financials change, then that plan could change. But either up or down, right? There might be some management reserve there for a couple of other people if things go well. And of course, there'll be a cutback in new hiring if things don't go so well. Now, December comes along and we've got this plan now to hire 3 new engineers in January, February, or March. And so 3 postings go out, okay? Now there's some data behind this, right? It's not just we're gonna hire 12 engineers. There's a description of what they're going to work on, what kind of background we need. So that's all part of the strategic plan. And so a candidate shows up for one of those 3 jobs, not really a good match for any of those 3, but could be and maybe is a match for one that's planned a little farther down in the year. And if you are a really strong candidate, those hidden jobs available, but nobody knows about them except for a small number of people, become a available job for you. Now they may, because of corporate governance, if a good candidate comes up and they want to accelerate the hiring process, they may still have to post the job, but you arrived, you triggered the event that opened up that job, and for you it was completely hidden. So that's one way that there's a lot of positions available but aren't advertised. And so one reason I say 3 times, I think the hidden job market is approximately 3 times the posted job market. Another example is sort of a short-term event, right? So for instance, I was talking to a candidate today who applied for a job, and I asked them, well, how did you find out about this job? And they found out through one of their professional organizations. And so the way it happened was the company was looking for a certain, I can't remember now what it was, but a certain skill set. And so they called the organization, the local Dallas chapter of people who do that. And they said, well, I'm getting ready to post this job, and I'm gonna make it to you, available to you first, so you can post it to your members. So there you go. Now this job is for a while, for a few days, maybe a week, is only known to a small number of people, okay? Not known to the general public. And then eventually it ends up on their webpage, or it ends up on Indeed. And now everybody knows about it, so it's posted, but for a period of time, it was not posted. It was only available to a select number of people. And of course, you want to be one of those select number of people. And so that's a job that's hidden for a week or two. And if you can find out about it in advance, then you've tapped into the hidden job market. And your path to that is these people you make who you have something in, the people you meet who you have something in common with, who become your supporters or your connections. So that's how you find the hidden job market. But it would be even better if you, kind of proactively pursued this. So developing an advantage by having connections in several companies that may be interesting to you. And so that starts with making a list of target companies. And Walt's going to mention this. We're not going to talk a lot about it, but there's some presentations from Mike Ray and Chip Lipton in particular that will tell you how to find your target companies. But you need to be, you're trying now with purpose to build supporters and champions inside companies. And you identify the target companies. You ask when you meet people, your ask is of them is, do they know someone, or perhaps know someone who knows someone who works at this company? Or you might mention a couple of companies. It's a very simple ask, because just about anybody you meet who's not, you may not have that much in common, but if you give them a simple ask, they may respond to that, right? The simpler the better. So you're just asking for a name. That's all. You know somebody, or know somebody who knows somebody who works at EDS. I don't think EDS exists anymore. How about HPE? HPE Enterprises, or National Data, or Toyota. And so once you get that name, now you want to set up an informational interview. And so through your informational interviews, you're going to be seeking advice and feedback. I think there's only one rule about informational interviews, is you don't ask for a job, okay? You're seeking advice and feedback, and you're gaining through that information and insight about the company. Now, along the way, you're going to get these names, you're going to call these people. You may find you have something in common, okay? And it's probably more likely that you have something in common if they work in an area that you're interested in, or for a company that you'd be happy to go to work for. It's more likely that you do have something in common professionally. And so they can also, some of those will not, be able to help you that much, and not all that interested in helping you, but more than a few will likely become connections or supporters of your cause to get inside the company. And we hear about this all the time in the pit crew, where people have made some contact with somebody they didn't know before inside the company, and that's kind of paved the way for their candidacy. And Walt's going to talk all about how you do this, and what you ask for, and how you approach the target person you want to talk to the hidden job market, and much more targeted and purposeful than just meeting people and hoping that they have something you're interested in or they work. Now it comes time, you've done this, you've done some informational interviewing with your list of target companies. You have a few connections inside these organizations, and a job description comes up that looks good for you, okay? Now, before you'd done this informational interviewing, you would just apply, you put your information into the applicant tracking system black hole, and you had about a 2% chance of being contacted through that effort. But really not much effort and really not much return. And so instead, since you now have a connection or two or three inside this company, you can decide who you want to reach out into the company and say, would you refer me, or, I'm interested in this position. It looks like a good match for me. Would you like to be the one who refers me into the company? Now, a lot of times employees get a bonus for this, and if it goes all the way to being hired. And so some of them are quite eager to do this and can make some good money. So now you're not even going through the ATS, okay? You're going to ask the employee to take your resume and drop it off with the recruiter, or maybe even the hiring manager. Although, yeah, maybe even the hiring manager, okay? And now you become a second-degree connection to the internal recruiter, or a second-degree connection to the hiring manager, right? Because an employee, someone they know, has referred you. And in that case, where you have a contact inside the organization, even if it's the recruiter, you have about a 50% chance, 1 out of 2, 50% chance of being contacted. But there's even more advantage. I call that the fast lane. Okay. And I've seen, there was a story in the pit crew where someone applied for a job, and 4 or 5 months went by, and they ran into somebody they used to work with, and they found out that person worked at where they had applied. Okay. So they asked, would you, sponsor, I applied 5 months ago. Would you sponsor me? Would you let the recruiter know that I'm a good match for this job? And within hours, they received a call from the recruiter, and were ushered into the queue, right, to be interviewed for this job, because they moved from that ATS black hole to now a referred candidate, and things started to happen immediately. So that's the way it can work. But now there's even more to be gained by informational interviewing, because you get into the fast lane, you go right to the hiring manager, to a screening interview. But the information that you gain through your informational interviews gives you insight and knowledge that other candidates may not have. It's likely other candidates don't have. And so that makes you a more effective interviewer. You know things and have insight that other candidates don't have. You can be much more confident in explaining how you can help, based on the information and insights you gained in your informational interviews. And that will shorten your job search significantly. So there you are, and interviewing effectively, and then starting your new job, and then, and then leaving stage left with the checkered flag. There we go. So that's the big picture. I hope this has helped you understand informational interviews, where they fit in, target companies, how they help, and how you can use the information you gain to inform your interviewing and shorten your job search. And by the way, if it doesn't work out, one of these cycles doesn't work out, you have other circles like this going at different companies, waiting for the opportunity to arise for a good position that you can be referred into.
All right. So what have we learned so far? So in summary, we say, well, for the posted jobs, about a third of them are done by recruiters, internal, external. A lot of our job postings go into the black, our applications go into the black hole. It's like a 2% return on that. So we've learned that job posting is a part of the way to go, but not very much time to be spent there. Do not limit ourselves to job postings only. That's kind of a subtle message, and coming out and saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe I want to find a company where I want to work and a job that I'd like to do, but it's not posted, but let me find out what's going on in the company. Maybe they need my help and need my assistance. And so don't let the fact that there's a job not posted stop us, because there's a lot of jobs that are posted internally, but not externally yet. And that's that hidden job market. So why don't we chase that market instead? So kind of keep our our ideas open about how we're going to find employment, find that work, find the job that we want in the place where we want to do it. So that's kind of summarizing that. So let's get into some of the specifics about informational interviews, which is probably the strongest and best tool to use in accomplishing that fact of getting you into that particular position quicker. So, a couple of questions for you. And so I've asked Jeff if he'll pull up a poll. So how many days a week do you spend applying online?
Those people on Facebook, please just enter you can just enter A, B, C, D, E, or F in the comment field.
Now, I can almost tell you who answered A, B, C, D, E, F, how long you've been in the job search. Because there's kind of a process where, okay, well, let me get out there and take those posted jobs and start applying, because that's the easy way to do it. I'm very active, I'm busy, I'm doing things, I'm trying to make progress. Then we learn it's not working out so well, and then we get into some other avenues and say, well, maybe I need to change what I'm doing and do something a little differently. So the purpose for Mark and I to talk about information interviewing today is to help you shorten that job search and say, here's something you can do to help do that. And then we've got some concerns about doing it. Some of us are not really happy about doing it. So let me ask another poll. So let's go to the second poll. So the next poll is, how many days per week do you spend networking, or I-N-E, informational interviewing, or creating connections, or finding new people, scheduling time to schedule conversations with people? All that's included in the general field of networking, which will help you actually do your informational interviews. Well, these answers are also indicators of how long you've been searching too. So I don't have this poll, but I would ask you just a question for you to answer yourself. How many days should you spend networking? Because we all know and have the intellectual capability to understand that networking is better, but there are some barriers and reasons that we don't do it. So we'll talk about that too. So before we do an informational interview, we need to prep. All right, that kind of goes without saying, but I say it anyway. I love it when somebody says, I'm going to introduce to you a person who needs no introduction. Well, okay, well, don't introduce them then. But preparation for information. How can we go through these kind of list of things? Boy, I hit my mouse and it just goes crazy. First of all, in your introduction, if you want to meet someone, tell someone, what would you tell them? What would you say up front? And if you're just casually meeting somebody and they were to ask you, what do you do? Well, this would be what you want to have to answer that question, this unique selling proposition. That's what Jack Bick's term is. He's a career coach. But it's also your unique value proposition. So I help people gain skills and confidence for successful hiring interviews. All right, a sentence, not too many words, something specific. And it kind of tells you what I do and what the results of what I do are. So it's how I help in that phrase. And so I'm a big fan of I am, I do, I help. If you've heard anything about the interviewing side, you'll know those three terms from me. Anyway, something that you can say to gain attention, to tell people something, give them context, and also to be different than other people. So that unique selling proposition or the value. Always need to have your resume handy and your bio handy, all right? It's not that you want to throw resumes in anybody's face. In fact, the bio, I think, is the better tool for your informational interviews to use and have ready for those. Doesn't say I'm looking for a job. Informational interviews are not meant to say I'm looking for a job and I want you to help me find a job. It's to help you find the information out that would help you get a job. It's more that. And so, but it can morph, okay? So they might want to ask you for your resume later as you go through this process. And so you want to have these handy. If you're meeting face-to-face, person-to-person, you've got these somewhere on you. And online, of course, you can always send something to someone via online. You have to have your attributes and achievements inventory, which is how you can help. What can I do for you? What are the things that I am accountable to? What am I responsible for? But if I speak in terms of I help increase revenue, I like to save customers, I like to do these types of things. What are the attributes in your achievements? Who am I and what can I do? So that's an I am and I help side. What am I like? You need to be prepared to describe that to people, even though in the information interview that might not come up, but you need to have that preparation in case it does, because some of these things can change. You have your references. If you don't have your references prepared and ready, because the results of an informational interview that might morph into a regular interview, they might want to contact a reference to talk about something. So you should have your references ready and available in case they come up. It's too late if somebody says, I want to talk with one of your references and you don't have any. And then your prioritized target industries and companies. So dadgummit, I thought I spelled that right. I corrected that the last time. I still haven't got it. So your prioritized target industry and companies. I would strongly suggest, and Jeff, if you'll put that into the chat window, that you look at the session that Jeff's recorded for Kip Lifson and Mike Ray, and Mark alluded to it earlier on reference solutions. It's a tool to help you find and vet target companies. So I strongly recommend you do that. Most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today assumes that you've done that and you have target companies and you have people that you are targeting. You can't just get into a conversation without having something in mind about what you're looking for. And then you can research your potential connections. So who are the people I need to talk to? What do I need to know about them? And so LinkedIn is a great place to find out that information. One of the strongest things you're looking for on LinkedIn is a common connection, something in common between you and that person. It might be knowing someone in common. It might be you went to the same school, but it's finding something in common. That builds a connection. And I'll talk about contacts and connections in a few minutes. There's also a piece of software out there called crystalknows.com that actually analyzes a person's LinkedIn page and comes out and tells you about their person and how you deal with them and some things like that. Is anybody online that has used Crystal Knows and could speak a short sentence or two about it? Okay, I assume not. But take a look at that. There is one, you can do one for free, but from the information that we've heard and from the person that we found out who lives out in Phoenix, I can't remember her name, but she has used it and said it's really good. And she analyzed Jeff, and Jeff thought it was 80–85%, if I remember right, on track of that. So that's a possibility for you to use on people to get prepared. Remember that we're always on stage. We're never not networking. We're networking right now. You're participating. Now, whose face do I see on the screen? Now, I've got a limited view right now, but when I see everybody's face on the screen, I'm making some information, some connection, some assumptions about you, all right? There are those of you that show your virtual screen, I mean your cell phone screen, and other you turn off your visual. And so I suggest that you get to the point where you feel good about turning on your visual so that you can see and others can see you too. That's going to be, I think, a better help for you. So I know there's reasons sometimes for you not to do it, but I suggest if you can get to that point, it would probably be better for you. Then the information interview targets. There are sometimes unplanned, then there's the planned. The unplanned don't happen as often as the planned, the ones that we target, the ones that we go after. So who are the people that have the information we seek? So every informational interview that you have, you should have a specific amount or data or information about what you want to find out. It's not just, I'm gonna just go in and talk to somebody. Somebody said the question is, I was talking to somebody, but we kind of ran out of stuff. And how, what is it I can do? Well, you might meet people. So if you have that value proposition and talk about what you do, but you want to talk about them. You talk about them first. So who are those people? Or those people who know the people who have the information we seek. So that's getting a referral, just like we might do for interviewing for a job. So who are the people inside of the target companies, inside the target industry segments? So some people don't have to be in the industry or in the company, but we're just looking for some information that other people can help us with because they are an expert or they have a lot of knowledge about that. It doesn't necessarily have to be inside the company or inside that industry. Just to note, you've heard of the 6 degrees of separation, which says at most you're 6 people away from finding any person in the world, which is an amazing, amazing number and statistic. What's even more amazing to me is that 2 links have a 50% chance of success. So if you're asking for people to find somebody in a company, if that's your situation, and you ask both for the 1st and 2nd degree connections, which is, do you know someone, or maybe you know someone who at this particular company that might know someone there. So then you're getting the 1st and 2nd degree. If you ask a person, do you know anybody, they'll think and that they'll limit their answer to do they know somebody or not. But if you say, do you know somebody who might know somebody, you have really widened your possibilities and chances of success. Networking is relationshiping. That's my term for it. It's helping others. It seems a little one-sided sometimes. It says, oh, I'll start my informational interviews and do all my networking tasks now that I need help, all right? Now that I want to contact somebody that I haven't contacted in years, but now I need help, so I'll call them. The only thing that people don't do that are kids when they want some money. They don't wait, they just come ahead and ask. We don't have to worry about them. So what's a contact, what's a connection? I'm going to define a contact, someone we know little about. Basically, it's someone we don't know much. And they may not know much about us, but we don't know much about them. Now, some people, there's a lot of people that I meet that know something about me through the interview success workshop. And they know my coaching, they've experienced it, and they do that. And I know a little bit about them. Okay, I've seen their job description, perhaps, or their resume. And so I know a little bit, but I'm going to tell you, I can't remember all of those. I just can't. But if someone were to talk to me and say, hey, I went through your workshop, we've got an instant connection. So who are the people that we want to develop into a connection? So what's a connection? So I would suggest we do this. We want to look at who knows us. It used to be who you know, but today it's who knows you, right? The ones that know you are better able to represent you to others. So I suggest we rate them first by knowledge about us. Do they know our character? Do they know our experience and our value? Do they know the I am, I do, I am? What parts of that do they know? If it's high, that would mean they have significant knowledge. Medium, we have some, and low says, well, a little knowledge. So I'll look at all my contacts and see how do they become a connection? Which ones are connections? And I rate them this way. Now there's a second rating I want to do is how willing are they to help us? There's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge about us, but they're not willing to help. So we have to figure out and find out how will they help us and how much. Of course, those that are happy to help are high on the list. So they get a 1. And so the medium provides some and the lows provide none. So how can I tell if somebody might be happy to help? I'll give you one example. I go out to LinkedIn, and so I'm looking at Patty, and I looked at her and I see she has been out of a job in the last 2 or 3 years, or last couple of years. She's been looking for a job. You know that people who've been looking for a job in the last year or two are a lot more willing to help other people who are looking for a job as well. If a person has worked in a company for many years and it doesn't look like they haven't been looking for a job, in general, that doesn't mean they don't, but in general, they're not as able or willing to help us. But those who have been unemployed for a little while will generally be glad to help us each. So I'm looking for the A1s, all right? So once we get them, we have the people, then we can focus on a prioritized list. Looks like we want to spend more time on the A1s, and the A2s. Then we go to the B1s, the B, et cetera. And once we get that, we can start working on it. But remember, we still want to continue expanding our network, expanding our connections. So that's a continual process. We don't just do it for a little while and stop. You keep adding names going on. How do you add a name? You build relationships. So let's talk about referrals. So somebody's giving you a referral and say, hey, you ought to talk to Mark. He knows about how to help you discuss and answer the question, why did you leave your last job? He's an expert on that. He's really good at it. All right. So the referral source might just say, yeah, just call Mark and tell him Walt sent you. Okay. And you get that kind of response. So that's called a cool call. Now the warm call has a good, better, and best than the warm. The good is where I send Mark an email and say, hi, I know Patty, and she's interested in finding out about your coaching on why you left your last job. Would you be willing to talk to her? Right? And I get a response back from Mark. Then I send an email to Mark and to Patty, and I say, want to introduce you to each other. Patty, I know you're interested in why you want to leave your last job, and Mark is interested in helping you do that. And then I kind of step back and take it away, all right? And so that's better. I get a meeting between you, and I get a trilateral meeting is where I say, hey, wait a minute. So we're in a room now where we're back face to face and we're talking about something. And I say, wait a minute, come over here. Let me get you to meet Mark. And I pull you across the room and say, here's Mark. Mark does this kind of thing. You mentioned you were looking for some help with that you had some issues and concerns about how to answer that question. And I introduce you right there on the spot, all right? That's really good. So it's a lot easier to do when we're meeting back face to face, but we can still do that online some. And the hot call is when I call Mark and say, Mark, Patty's in, just talk to you. He says, okay. And he calls Patty right away. He doesn't wait for Patty to call. He calls her. So that's a hot call. There are a couple of people out there that I've met that I've referred to. Then I send them an email back and said, how'd it go? I said, have you talked? He said, oh yeah, I've already called them. I've already talked to them. So he reaches out to the people immediately. And guess what? He was looking for a job for about a year, not too long ago. Perseverance is required. The job search can be up and down, as you well know. You get negatives, you get no's, you do things, and it's kind of like the funnel. Some are successful and some are not. It's like the parable of the sower of the seed. Some fall among the thorns, some don't grow, but some fall in the fertile ground. And if you nurture them, they will grow. So that's the thing that we have to look at is perseverance. Now let's step back a minute. What is in the informational interviewing anyway? So what I would say is from the definition that I have here, it's a meeting where you initiate to gain additional knowledge from a person that's got the experience. All right. It's not a job interview because we're interviewing, right? And the ball's in our court as to its content and to its flow. So in job search, we have a meeting featuring a conversation about our career, company, or industry. We want to find something out about those three things between you and someone who may be able to help you get that job in the future directly or indirectly. Directly, they know someone in the company. Indirectly, they may know somebody who knows somebody. Or they may suggest somebody else you can talk to, those kinds of things. So that's what we're looking at, just the basics. I think you all understand and know that. But one of the basic advantages and positive things about it is we get to go to the front door into a targeted company. Now, I have a tough time saying, is it the front door or the back door? Because people, I think the front door is applying for a job. So, okay, if that's your definition, then we're going to use the back door. But I call applying for a job really the back door because it's so unproductive in that this is the front door. So a little semantics lesson from what I think about these words. And it's also a way, really, did I miss that? There we go. I'm having to move some things around. A way to build a mutually beneficial relationship. So our objective with informational interviewing is to build that relationship, right? We build the relationship first before we ask for help. That's a key thing. So when we're talking to people, we want to talk about them. We want them to tell us some things. And so we're interested in them, get that, getting them talking about that. Then they will turn and then ask something. You will tell me about you, or tell me what you're doing, or whatever it might be. But you let them talk first because you want to find out something about them. You want to mention something. Maybe you see something in common, whatever it might be. But you don't build a relationship with just you talking. You've got to have them talking. So I always suggest we let them go first and find out about that first in your questions. So why do we do it? Well, we might want to look to somebody to get an assessment of, where do you think we still, where I stand? I'm looking to do this. What do you think I can accomplish that? Or what do I need to do it takes to accomplish that? And what skills do I need? All right. Is my strategy correct? What do you think about my resume? A lot of people are wanting to get a lot of feedback on resumes. I just wonder how much time you spend on resumes versus how much time you spend on practice interviewing, right? And so we spend an awful lot of time on resumes. I don't know, sometimes you were on version 37 or whatever. So while I'm on the subject, I suggest you have a master resume, and then you pull that in and say, this one I'm going to tailor. I'm just going to take off a few bullets. I'm going to reorder maybe a couple of things in priority, and it's going to say really the same things on LinkedIn, but it's going to be shorter than what's on LinkedIn. But it'll still be the same type of stuff. To be consistent, that's very important to be consistent. So I want to find out about a company or an industry or the competition or the products or the services. I'm looking to gain information so I can go in, particularly if I'm changing industries. So I'd really like to talk to some people in that industry to learn the lingo, to learn what's important, what's going on, what are the trends and things like that. So that when I'm talking to people, I can talk intelligently about that industry. So let me arm myself, do my research, do my homework, so that when I get into the real interview, I can talk about that industry as an example. Well, that's also to find out if we want to work there. So you're interested in the company, so you're still in the vetting process. Looks like it's pretty good. So let me talk to somebody in there and find out what it's like to work there, right? So that's one of the things. What are the problems, challenges, issues that face? And that's a really good thing to talk about to a person internally, because you might be able to help them with some of those things. Understanding the culture is pretty important. I think it's extremely important if you're trying to vet a company. If the culture doesn't match, forget it. Just don't go there, because nothing else is going to matter. So finding out about those things, do a match, do they occur between us and the company? And let's find out what it's really like working in a certain place. I talked to a pharmacist. She said, the stress, the strain, the pressure of being a pharmacist is just too much. Now, I'm amazed at what pharmacists' knowledge have with chemistry. I mean, I never figured out chemistry. You put these two things on the left and you put an arrow and these things happen on the right. And I never understood how to put the stuff on the right. It was terrible, but they know an awful lot. And she was very unhappy. She sells dresses in a boutique and is extremely happy. She's really fine what she wants to do. So one of the really realities, I also remember when I was in college and I went to my dentist, I thought about being a dentist. So I asked the dentist if I could talk to him one day and talk about, I said, oh yeah, come on in. And we made an appointment. I was in his office and we talked for about 30 minutes and I learned I didn't want to be a dentist. So those kind of things can help, and people are willing to help you. They really are. Expand your professional network. All right. So you always want to be expanding your information and contacts and connections. All right. Who might become a resource? Continue building that. and improving your interview skills, your industry knowledge, confidence, all that information. It was on Mark's circular diagram of saying, when you get information and go through that informational interviewing and gain that knowledge and skills and abilities to be able to talk about better things, when you get into the real interview, it's going to help you with that. Make a big difference. And of course, uncover new job opportunities that aren't accessible to you as an outsider. So that's that hidden job market. Go into a company that you like, find out what's going on. They may not have a job posted, but through your conversation with them and you start talking about you a little bit of how you can help them do these kinds of things, that can go into say, well, we might want to have some further conversations and talk to you about working here. Of course, we want to learn what our peers with the traits and skills like ours have done. So what's going on in your world? It seems like we have these things in common. What's been your background? What's your history? Where you hit all that sort of thing. So that's another way of looking at it. Understand what's most important to employers. So if you're talking to the company, people in the company that you're interested in, what's the most important things to them? We want to be able to address those and find out what they are. It'd be great to have all this knowledge before the interview, right? And of course, apply our knowledge to do a better resume and make a more positive impression during the job interview. And I should have put this one first, probably, is discover what you can do for them. A sentence about that. Have any of you been told by someone, say, well, listen, if you need anything, let me know? Bet you have. Now, how many of you have needed something and called them? I bet you haven't. Therefore, let's not do that. That's not offering assistance. That's not helping at all. But discovering what we can do for them is. So we don't know what to do. We don't know how to help them, whatever. Well, let's find out. So that's in that informational interview. When you find out what's going on, you may discover some things. You're looking for things you can discover this. Okay, maybe I can help them with that. Maybe put them in touch with somebody or send them an article or do something like that. What can you do for them? It's not just, when I was in leadership and I was talking with the group and I said, what do you do if one of your employees has a death in the family? Do you go to the funeral? And several people said, no, you don't go to the funeral. I said, well, why not? And it kind of worked down a path of saying, are you telling me your employees are not important enough to you to go to their family funeral? And everybody ends up saying, we should go, we should do that, all right? And it's kind of like this. Find out and discover what the needs are. Don't just say, can I help you? Or what is it I can do? If you can, you certainly can ask that question. Offering is good. It gives you something to at least offer it. It says, I would love to be of help to you. Is there anything I can do for you? All right. But let's go further than that and discover what the needs are. Then that makes a lot better, because I mean, I always like it when, if you give a birthday present to somebody and they say, how did you know I wanted one of these? Okay. They're very impressed that you knew something about them that they would like that sort of thing. Other than, oh, a tie, thank you so much, right? And build rapport and make that connection. So we want to build contact into a connection, have that rapport with them through that conversation, and to get a potential referral. So now we talk about some of the reasons, or a little bit about why we don't do informational interviews. So the poll earlier. So I picked out about 5 different things here, that some of the barriers that I hear people telling me that stops them from doing an informational interview. So I'm not ready, I'm not connected, I'm not good at it, it's difficult to ask for help, and maybe there's something else. And so if you have something that's not those 4, please drop it into the chat window. For those of you that are not ready yet, are you ready to get ready? All right, that would be my question to you. So I'm not connected enough. Okay, are you ready to start building your connections? Would be the situation for choice B. I'm not good at networking. Okay, are you ready to start practicing and start getting better at doing networking through your informational interviews? Right? It's difficult to ask for help. Okay, let me address that one briefly. Patty, I'm kind of choosing you because I can see you a little bit. How do you feel if I come to you and say, Patty, I understand that I'm going to pick a field that you're in, that you've been in retail for quite a while and you know a lot about retail, and I'm really interested in talking to you. Would you be willing to spend some time with me and see if maybe after the retail industry would be good for me? Well, I'm looking at the idea of saying that if someone asks me for help, I'm kind of impressed because they want to hear what I have to say.
Sure.
I mean, in our jobs, anybody ever feel overutilized?
Yes.
And we feel probably underutilized. We probably can, do more than they're asking us to do. Is anybody really interested in your opinion about things? Not too often, right?
Mhm.
But when somebody comes up to you and says, I'm really interested in what you have to say, and I value your opinion and your ideas and your information, I think you're going to get a lot of people who would really enjoy helping you.
Sure.
All right. So if that's true and you're like that, then why don't we ask people? So here's my statement. We need to learn how to let people help us, right? Because we feel it's just difficult. All right. I don't like doing that. But you've got so many people out there that are willing to help and would like to help and want to help. So we're doing a good thing for them by letting them help us. They feel better. They feel good about it. So why don't we approach it that way instead of the concern about asking for help? How to gain confidence. Don't be afraid to ask. And I've got a little bit more on that. Do some research, prepare your questions, keep it short, follow up. All right. You don't walk into an informational interview or even a choice meeting without having that preparation that I talked about earlier. So you've got that research. Now, if you have a specific area that you want to talk about, which is what you should have for any particular informational interview, a specific target, a specific amount of information, you may have 2 or 3 topics, but they're specific, all right? So that when you're talking to them, so I'm interested in talking to you about these things, all right? Something very specific. And then you have a list of questions that says, here's how I can find out what I'm looking for. Here's my 4 or 5 questions, whatever that I can say to find out if this is the right thing for me, or if this is I'm headed in the right direction, or if I'm getting good information about the industry, or whatever your target information is in that information interview. Keep them short, all right? And I'll show you how to do that. But whatever time frame we set, we want to keep to it. And then follow up. Follow up is really critical because thank you notes, I suggest you send thank you notes to anyone who helps you. Anyone sends you a suggestion, a thank you note. Here's something that I don't get back very much when I'm send out information to people and say, here's a connection you might want to talk to, or whatever it might be that go through that process, is I never hear back from them. They don't come back and say, yeah, I had a conversation, talked to them. It was good or bad or didn't work, or I learned this, or whatever it might have been. And so it would be nice when we follow up with someone who has helped us to tell them they helped us. And what was it about it that you did to help them? That makes us feel good. Anytime I talk to, say, Patty, I did talk with Mark about why you left your last job. He was a great help to me. Thank you so much for introducing me to Mark. All right. That kind of thing, that kind of feedback. And then always, how can I help you? So we're always asking how we can help. All right. A few other benefits: exposure, visibility, increased confidence, and referrals. So we get ourselves known. we're letting people know that we're looking for work through this process. If you don't let them know, then they can't help us. Sometimes we feel, it's not, I don't like to let people know that I'm unemployed and it bothers me. Well, get over it. Just get a feeling inside that says people do want to help you. Just letting them know. Mark mentioned a story. I have a story about the person that was in I think it was a food kitchen for a nonprofit. And she said, gee, I was wanting to get into the George Bush Foundation. And I had an interview with him, but it didn't work out. And the woman she was talking to said, oh, you should have told me. We vacation with the Bushes every year. Okay. And here's this connection. Well, if you had just let somebody know, right? That's all you had to do. Visibility. You can get on the short list. Mark mentioned the story of getting into the part where in an hour or two, he got a call. People will put you at the top of the list if somebody is your champion or refers you. So, or you go right to the top of the list. They rather do that because that's easier. It gives me a feeling of easier confidence that this may be a person else rather than going through the hard part of trying to match up keywords on resumes through my job descriptions and stuff like that with the applicant tracking system. It's a lot longer, harder work. This is better. And confidence. So the more you talk with people, the more informational interviews you have, the better you are prepared and then confident in the job interview. And so always you want to build rapport and continue making connections so you can give and get referrals. All right, let's talk just a bit about the informational interview itself. So your opening says, I want to introduce myself and what's the purpose of the meeting? What am I trying to achieve? What am I want to do here? All right. Very specific as to what you're trying to do. I have questions about whether it's person, company, competitors, industry, some knowledge in a specific area, whatever it is that you're targeting. I have questions ready for that particular thing. And then when I close, I'm going to ask a couple of things. So, do you know anyone else I should talk to? Right? I mean, it's always good to talk with somebody and see if you can't get one or two referrals to other people about maybe whatever came up in that interview. Chase it down. If you're looking for a particular position in a company and you've had a talk, says, well, are you aware of any positions that might fit the needs that you talked about? Another question you might ask is, do you know anyone else who would be willing to talk to me? That's the same thing as any others I should talk to, I guess. And is there something I can do to help you? Now, I'm looking for an answer. I'm not looking for just an offer, although you might not get anything. But if through that conversation, you determined there was a need there, it might be say, you know, we talked about this. I might be able to help you with that. I know a person, or I know I'll have some information about. Can I send that to you? Whatever it is, that would even be stronger. So close it. Stay within the time limit. Our time is up. I want to honor your time. I am available if you'd like to talk further, but stay to your time limit. Be prepared to answer questions about your search. It can turn to you and it can go back and the interview changes and they're the interviewer and now you are the candidate. Have your research, your resume, your biography, business cards, have that information handy. You know what's good about a business card? Is getting theirs. It's kind of like we don't care a whole lot what they do with ours, but I have theirs. I have their contact information. So when we ever get back face to face, that'll have a lot more say. And then be prepared because it could morph into a job interview and do that follow-up that we talked about, right? Try to benefit your contact in some way before you ask for help, i.e. build a connection first, right? Build a connection first before you ask. That way, that's some of the reason why we don't want to ask for help is because we haven't built a relationship, we haven't done something. But if you help somebody else, Irma Bombeck says, you know, that's the gift that keeps on giving. I owe you back. If you've helped me, I want to help you back. That's kind of the nature of ourselves today and our personalities that we do. People that help me, I kind of want to help them back. So help them. It's not a technique. It's because you want to build a connection. This is important. This is somebody you want to have a relationship with. This is somebody you want to help. The more people you help, the greater the return you're going to be for getting help. And then you prepare some scripts. And I'll give you a short example. Now, this one assumes you've done your research and you've done your targeting and all that sort of thing. You just don't walk in and say this at the beginning. So I'm in the process of making some career decisions, and your advice would be extremely helpful. Try to learn about these things, and your insight and experience would be very important as I make this decision. So I only need about 20 minutes. Can we set up a meeting for next Tuesday or Wednesday? So the key words in this particular one is, what are you specifically looking for? Career decisions. What do you want from them? Their advice. Advice is a nice word to use. I'm looking for your opinion, your information. I seek your advice. I think it's important to hear what you have to say. And you're telling them that your insight and experience. Why do I think you are the person that should be given this information? What's important about that? It's telling them that you value them. Here's why you value them and why you're willing to listen to them. Makes me feel good when you say, gee, Walt, you know a little bit about interviewing. I appreciate that. And then you give in that time, but you don't say, let's have lunch one day. That doesn't work. Because anybody that says you want to have lunch one day said, okay, when you want to have it, let's put it on the calendar. Let's get it scheduled. So can we set up a meeting? Be specific, be targeted. Here's about requesting a referral. And this is kind of a generic way of setting it up. So I'm Fred Johnson, and how do I know about them? And is there anything we have in common? I'm interested in, here's what I'm seeking. I'm going to describe a person. If I'm looking for a person that says that would have this kind of knowledge, who might provide this specific information, whatever specific, and on any additional. So everything that's underlined is something you got to fill in, right? With your why I value them, I believe you might know the kind of people. So who do you know? I'm going to skip over this one because you can come back and look at the video that's going to be put on YouTube afterwards, just to shorten the time frame. But another example of how you might request a referral. So I'm going to throw in a few scripts so that you can get some ideas of how to say it, because scripting it out is going to help you. So suppose a contact then provides a referral. So once a name is provided, we want to do a little bit more. Well, how do you know them? In other words, what's the relationship between you and that person? All right. What's the reason that you think that that person would be a good contact? So we're doing a little due diligence on the connection to find out. So what kind of information would they have? What kind of expertise do they have? How should I contact them? Would you be willing to contact them first? May I use your name when I call them? Who else do you think I should talk to? So I'm not listing these. You don't ask all of these. You just choose the ones that are appropriate in the situation to say, which ones should I find out about? But basically, find out about the connection. Find out something about from that person. So I'm looking to gauge the relationship between the person I'm talking to and their connection. Strong relation, oh, we worked together for years, means something different than, oh yeah, well, my wife knows him, all right, or my husband knows him, or somebody else. So find out what that is. How can I be of assistance to you? Always asking people how you can help. So if they don't provide a referral, still we're going to thank them anyway, but we can still ask some questions and say, well, is there any advice you can give me on my next steps? A very generic, open-ended question. Any advice how I might find out the information I'm looking for? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Something that says, help me, guide me through where I can go get this information. If you don't have it, where might I find it? And I still appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And how can I be of assistance to you? So here's another one with a referral. And you can read that as you go through and look at the video, because I'm going to stop soon. So the key words: career decisions, valuable advice, brief meeting, advice, insight. So I would suggest you take these keywords and say, all right, I want to use these keywords in whatever I'm talking about. So I'll highlight those. Those are the ones that I suggest that you have include in your informational interview request. All right. The key to all successful information interviewing is building a relationship first, ask for assistance second, and offer to be assistance always. The real purpose is to build relationships and develop future connections. Sport of champions. So it's not just a one-off meeting where we're going to find out something. It's a long-lasting relationship. So look at it from the long view and say, I'm trying to cultivate new professional connections. Should you practice? Well, you should practice informational interviewing as well as you practice interviewing. So Jeff and I both have the Dallas Pit Crew and the Interview Success Workshop. And I suggest you practice your informational interviews too. You can pick a partner and do that, go through that. Be glad to help. Now we can go to questions.
All right. I want to thank Mark and Walt for their presentation. We did have one question I saw in the chat window. Let's see here. And we'll throw this to Walt. So we all know you need to tailor your resume for each job, but you can't tailor your LinkedIn profile for each job. How do you deal with this to make sure your resume matches your LinkedIn profile when you know that a recruiter is going to check both?
Well, Jeff, you know the answer to that. You've spoken about it many, many times yourself. Jeff, he's got a lot of knowledge to be a coach. He really does. He works a lot harder in enabling us to learn many other things. But anyway, answer to that question is the consistency is basically a shorter resume, but everything on that resume is included on what I would call the master resume on LinkedIn. Is the consistency, but here's the deal. Look at your resume and say, okay, I'm reading this resume for a candidate. How long do you want to spend on it? How much do you really want to read the details of it? And the objective is the shorter we can make the resume to gain a contact or a call, the better. So everything on your tailored resume is included on your LinkedIn resume or your LinkedIn section. And I wouldn't put very much on the LinkedIn either. You've got to target a specific job. You can't target two different jobs because then your LinkedIn doesn't chase two different jobs. You got to pick one and go after it. Then if you change your LinkedIn to the new role you want to play and your resume accordingly.
So you need to change. You need to change your LinkedIn profile every time you change your resume.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not being clear. I've got this philosophy: if people don't understand me, it's my fault. So here's the deal. Here's how Jeff and I describe it. You have your master resume. You make a copy of it, and then you delete things. And you reorder and prioritize things that fit the particular job you're going for. You don't add anything. You just have the same type of information, but in a little bit different order than that. So when the person interested in for you, and I see your resume, I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn. And guess what? There's more stuff on LinkedIn, but all the stuff I mentioned on the resume is there too.
But I am looking for more than one job at a time. I'm not just looking. I'm not.
Yeah.
You're saying that's not good.
Well, no, that's fine. That's fine. I think the whole key is that you want to make sure that whatever's on your resume is also on LinkedIn, that the same job titles, the same dates, and a couple of the bullet points that you put on your resume, because that's what affects the job description, that those bullet points are on your LinkedIn profile. You want to just have some consistency. On your LinkedIn profile, you're going to have a lot more. You're going to have other things that you've done that may relate to other jobs, but you just want to make sure that whatever's on, you want that consistency, that if they find it, if it's on your resume, they can find it on your LinkedIn profile also.
So you're saying if a bullet point is on one of your tailored resumes, that, I mean, those same bullet points need to be on your LinkedIn profile?
It needs to be close. It needs to be the same concept, the same kind of thing. I mean, you know,
Same subject matter.
if you put in bullet points on a resume, they've got to have a story, and the story has to be the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So it must be a good story that you've gotten together, a good bullet point that you want to talk about. So if it's good for one job, you probably want to list it on your LinkedIn profile, because you never know who else is going to find you because of those keywords.
So I've got a job, my background, I could branch out in several different areas. And that's what I'm doing with my resumes, but I don't know how to get all of that content on my LinkedIn profile. That's a lot of stuff.
Robert, what are the different areas? Can you name some of them for me?
Well, my background was in, my last job was in laboratory information systems.
Right.
So I could go into IT help desk. I could go into clinical applications. I could go into help desk, service desk. There's a lot of, I did a lot of things at that job, and I could branch off into any of those areas and be happy. But I don't understand how I'm supposed to get all of the
Okay.
content.
Well, let me
Go ahead.
ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Suppose you put down and say, look, here's all the things that, I've done in this last job and some accomplishments. Now, my question to you, is there a subset of that fits all those different areas?
No, it kind of blends. I mean, the job description of each one of those different jobs I'm applying to is a little bit different. It's worded in a different way.
Right.
And I'm having trouble figuring out how to, what to put, because it's similar, but it's different.
Well, I'll tell you why you're having difficulty is because I would have difficulty. I mean, I think this is extremely difficult to chase. It depends on the amount of difference. But if I can say I've developed software, I led implementations, I worked with customers, I did this, then I might go for a development job and I'll just pull the development stuff off my master resume. If I go to a implementation job or a customer service job, I could still use that same information. And it really depends on how different that is.
Okay.
As to, what areas you can go into. But if you've had experience in those areas that you talk about,
Yes.
then you can put those individual experiences as bullets. You don't need a lot. Okay, you just need a bullet two on each of those areas included.
Okay.
All right.
And that would go into the about section, I guess.
Well, yeah, that would go in your experience section.
Okay.
Here's your experience. Now, when I do my resume, I'm gonna say, I've got 4 bullets under this one job. All right. 2 of them apply to clinical. 2 of them apply to testing. 2 of them apply to, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that you got them. And then when you pull your resume out, you just pull those out that are very relevant to the job description. And you still have, because what are people going to do, Robert? When they get your resume and stuff, what are they going to do first? What do you think people do? They go
Look at
LinkedIn?
your qualifications, right?
Well, they're going to go look at your LinkedIn. I mean, they might read some of your resume, but everybody's going to go to LinkedIn today. All right.
Uh-huh.
It is the tool. You can't write a check without a bank, and you can't get a job without something on LinkedIn. It's pretty hard. Well, you can, but it's pretty rare. You can go through a informational interview and get hired. Nobody even looks at your LinkedIn, right? But it's kind of rare. But everybody's going to go look at that LinkedIn profile. And if you're looking for different types of jobs, one of the biggest problems you're going to have is that, and I see this on LinkedIn a lot, that bothers me, is that it starts out with an about section, but it doesn't have a title of the job you're looking for. doesn't have a focus. And it means I have to read and research and figure it out as to what kind of job you're looking for. I see all this experience, but so what? Now, how are you going to put 5 different job titles on your LinkedIn for 5 different jobs? My suggestion to you is, which is the one that energizes you the most? Which is the one do you like the most? That's your A job. And you prioritize those and you go after A. And you set a time limit and say, if I can't get a job with A, I'm going to B. And then you change your LinkedIn profile, you change all the information, and you just go after that job.
So you're just doing it, you're doing jobs one at a time. You're waiting.
Right. Well, it's going to kill you to look for more than one job at a time. It's really hard.
But it seems like you're wasting a lot of time waiting for a response from that one job before you start putting out more resumes. But if your those extra resumes don't match the current LinkedIn profile, then you're.
Well,
You know.
listen, here's what needs to match. Job title, company name, and the dates you were at that job.
Okay,
Your
yeah,
bullet points don't necessarily need to match, okay? You don't have to necessarily have all your bullet points. And in your case, if you want to be doing 5 or 6 different job searches at once or with lots of different job titles, maybe you don't list any bullet points underneath each of those. You just put the basic company, title, and dates, because that's what somebody's going to check. And if they find that one of those aren't correct or don't match your resume, they'll kick you out. So if you don't want to list any of the bullet points of things you've done underneath it, all you've done is you've hurt yourself on LinkedIn, making it harder for a company to find you randomly, but you will match up any of those resumes that you're sending out.
okay, so I've done what you said, but I know that there is an about section and open to section, and open to has like right now there's 10 different job titles you can put in open to.
I think it's only 5 job titles.
No, I just looked, it was 10 on mine.
Oh, so they've upped it then. Okay.
They've upped it, yeah. So there's 10 different job titles, and so you can go and put 10 different things in there. But I'm wondering if the about section, which has so much capacity to put volume, if that would be the best place to put the job description snippets in there that you're getting off all these different job descriptions.
Okay, Robert, let me ask you this question. You look me up on LinkedIn, and in this open to, you see 5 different job titles. Are you gonna give me a call?
If one of those job titles is one that I'm looking for, yeah, I would.
You think
I
so?
would. I mean, if
there's
my
another-
company needs one of those job titles that you put up there, and you've got the qualifications, I would do it. I don't see anything against it.
Okay. Well, there's consequences on either decision you make. All right, you can make your decision if you want to chase those and do those. But if your LinkedIn activity, if it's things you put on there like your resume information doesn't match the job title that you're looking for, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's your challenge that you have. And so if there's not a way to, in a master resume, include the experiences of all of those job titles,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to have some difficulty putting that together. But that's one option to see if you can't have a master that includes the experience. You don't have to use all the job titles. Then you say, here's my experiences, so that somebody is looking at that saying, this is what I need to hire. Why put 5 different job titles in there? You're just trying to be found, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a lot harder. Chasing one job is hard. Chasing 2 jobs is harder than chasing 2 jobs. Chasing
Okay.
3 jobs, it's asymptotic. It gets harder to go after 3 or 4 things and keep it
Well,
all that than it does to pick 1 or 2 or something. So you might want to pick maybe just a couple as an
Yeah.
option, or 3 or whatever your top 2 or something like that. if the job titles are simply similar jobs but different titles, I could see that.
That's
Right.
what it is. And I didn't understand why that would be a bad thing. If they made that an option in LinkedIn, why, I don't understand why that's a bad thing.
Well, I don't say it's a bad thing. Here's what I say.
Difficult.
Working to be found has very low response rates. Finding has very high response rates.
Okay.
So if a lot of us are saying, look, I do all this so somebody will come out and find me, all right?
Mhm.
It's like, gee whiz. So I'm gonna get an offer letter and it's gonna say, here, Walt, we're gonna hire you. You don't have to do anything. We're just gonna pay you every week. Okay, well, I'm waiting on that. I hope to get that letter soon. Right?
Yeah.
And so being found is part of what you want to do. And you should do that. And then you got to leave that alone so that you can then go out and say, now I'm gonna spend my time finding. But yes, you do want to work some to be found. But
Yeah. I guess I've got some learning to do on how to manipulate LinkedIn.
yeah, well, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to be found when some of that time should be spent networking, talking to other people, doing those things. And so you are doing the lowest productive activities in that. So if you want to do that, do it, get it done, figure it out, and then go forward.
Yeah.
So Robert, I think one of the things to remember is, if I remember this number right, about 95% of the jobs you will get in your life are from people you already know or are referred by. So do you want to spend more time on the 5% getting found, or the 95% somebody you know or somebody you're meeting through an informational interview? It's a teeter-totter where you're going to get the best bang for your buck.
Okay. I just the reason for my question is that I didn't want to set up my LinkedIn account, my page, to where it was going to hinder, to where it wasn't going to look right to a recruiter. If he looked at my resume and then looked at my LinkedIn page and goes, hey, these, something's not right here. These don't match. And I was trying to figure out how to get all the information in that I needed.
The only thing that needs to match, as I said, is the job titles, the name of the company, and the dates.
But the qualifications.
The bullet points do not have to match.
Okay. All right. Okay. I can.
All right. Robert, we've had you for the last 20 minutes. Shannon, you had a question about what do you put on a bio, in a one-page bio. We're actually going to do a presentation next Friday morning. Minna Brown we're going to repeat a presentation we did this past summer about what do you put on a one-page bio. There's a really good book out there if you buy books off Amazon, or if you've got a Kindle. I think at one point her book used to be free, you could download. It's called Be Sharp. Make sure it's a second edition. It's by Minna Brown and Paula Asanoff. But if you just cite Minna Brown, Be Sharp, volume 2, second episode, if you can get it. It's like $17 on Amazon. I think it's the best book out there. The whole second half of the book talks about the bio, what should be on it. Like I said, we're going to replay her presentation next Friday morning at the North Dallas Plano group about one-page bios, because I think it's really, really important that people know about them. If you can't wait a week and a half, you can go search on the Career USA YouTube channel, and you can go find the presentation on one-page bios by Minna Brown. It was done sometime, I think, this summer. So you can go back in dates and find it during the summer.
Okay, thank you. I have a one-page bio that I would call a networking bio, and that's really kind of that leave behind after I've met with someone. So I'm not sure if this is the same thing, but it has a career objective, some career highlights, a profile, and then target list of companies. Is that what you were looking for, or is that too close to an ask?
You have to be careful with the target list of companies. I recommend you don't include those, because if you're sending, to me, it's the same document. It's the same document you're going to use for networking, or to have somebody else introduce you instead of sending a resume. Always send that one-page bio. But when you list those target companies, you have to make sure that whoever you're interviewing with, their company's listed is the first company on the list. Otherwise, they're going to go, well, wait, we're not even on here. Why do you want to network with me? So that's why I tend not to list target companies there. I think there's a better way to let your contacts know if you're looking for certain things. But yeah, I mean, a one-page bio, I think you can use before the interview, not before, when you're first networking with somebody. It's an extremely, it's a high level thing of who you are, what do you do, and how you can help the company. And here's some of the highlights that I've done. Here's a brief section of, here's where I've worked in the past, just companies and dates. You don't even list job titles, you just companies and dates, and your contact information and your picture. And it's just a great way, if we were going to have a networking meeting before meeting at Starbucks or something, hopefully you give that to me before so I could find out a little bit something about you. And that's the real key. I mean, I know there's a career job seeker that I know who they will never send out a resume until they've had a discussion to know exactly what that person's looking for. Because just because they posted a job or just because of whatever, they'll send that bio because that's enough, hopefully, to whet their appetite and get them to call you up on the phone.
So, in your point about the target companies, are you suggesting that the focus of your networking? So let me rephrase that. The way that I look at things is two ways. One is networking with people who can help connect me, and then networking into the companies that I'm interested in. So to me, that's two different documents.
Okay.
One is, Jeff, you're not at one of my target companies, but you're very well connected and I want to meet you, or maybe I just kind of want to gather your insights on what's happening in the market or a reaction to my resume because you're in my industry. And then the other is, how can I network in to actually know? So I guess I was looking at it for two different purposes. And the one that I don't have is the one without the target companies. And I was wondering if you even put a career objective on it. Did that one page bio that you and Walt talk about, is that something that is really much more personal about your experience, maybe more of a narrative, or is it kind of that standard bulleted doc? And I can go look at Mina's.
I can do it. I tell you what I'll do is I'm going to include, let's see here. Let me go, let's see. I'm going to attach something. I'm going to put two different bios in the, let me look here. Here's one. I'll put two different bios in the chat window, which you can download and take a look at. And
thank
maybe
you.
get an action. One has, let's see here. One has target companies and one doesn't. Also, one's vertical, one's horizontal. That doesn't make any difference either. I think it's probably pretty much the same document. And then maybe the one that has it that you don't want to include your target companies, you just add one more bullet point or just spread them out a little bit more to, to fill the page.
Okay.
Shannon, send me an email, walt_class@yahoo.com. I have several bios I've collected because people keep asking questions about them. And so how do you do them? And of course, there's 100 different opinions about what it looks like and all that sort of thing. But there's a few things I definitely would recommend. Mina's got some great tips about it.
Okay.
She has a format that she likes, but her revised book has a lot of samples in the back of that you might want to take advantage of. But here's the point. What's the risk and the downside of a company finding your bio that lists other companies on it, and how would they take that?
Great point.
So if you, I can do this. I can send you a bio, and in my email, I can send you the target companies. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
or offline rather than online type thing. So here's my target companies. Do that. So maybe to reduce that risk.
That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And well, years ago, I took your course. So just as an aside, I don't want to monopolize time, but to see you again, and I'll be coming back because it was so helpful.
Well, I've had some returnees, and that's because I've been doing this a long time, and jobs don't last as long as I've been doing it, so.
I get that.
I also put in the chat window, it's called a prayer letter for networking, something, you don't have to call it the prayer letter, but it may just be a good document on how do you reach out to all of your contacts and to remind them and to keep reminding them, what you're looking for, and you can modify it every time. So take a look at that document. It may be helpful.
Thank you. I'm sure that will.
To summarize this session, the main thing we need to really focus on is, if we're not networking, and I don't care what the reason is, what do you need to do to start networking? And do that. Do it with your friends, you practice it, you take a small step at a time or something like that. So it's a thing. And that idea of letting others help you. When somebody calls me and says, I need some interviewing help, I'm energized. Okay. Because I do have some expertise in that. And so when people ask me for help, I say, man, that's a pretty good feeling. They value what I've been. So, and other people have the same thing. And the other thing is, the biggest mistake that I'm seeing personally is the lack of getting something back that says, here's how you helped me. Here's what happened as a result. And it may be that, I learned not to be a dentist. I mean, that may be the result. Okay. But what was it? I mean, I sent off. Somebody had like 6 companies. I put a list together. I put all my first degree connections, my second degree connections, how I knew my first degree connections, what was the relationship between them, sent them all out, and here they were, and sent it to them. And I got an email that says, thank you. And that's the last I ever heard. Okay. Well, if I get asked for help by that person another time, I'm going to have a different response. I'm going to have a restriction on it. I'm going to have something like that. Says, when you give me feedback on the last time I helped you, I'll be glad to help you this time too. That's it.
That thank you is so important.
All righty. Let me just, I know we're running way over today. Let me just share a couple things. We'll get out of here. We're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us. Tomorrow being the first Thursday of the month, 1st of December, we'll talk all about effective resumes. So we'll share some best practices. And then if anybody wants to share their current copy of their resume, we'll take a look at it online. We'll be able to do 1 or 2 of those if we have time. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we are meeting in person or on Zoom, being the first Friday of the month. We will do open forum. We'll talk about whatever questions you have about your job search. And we can take this discussion longer about LinkedIn and resumes and all that. And we can go as long as people want to talk about it and get other people's opinions too. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW and Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, click on playlist and then go to interviewing. At the very bottom where it says view full playlist, click there. And one of the things you'll find is all 13 lessons that we've done that Mark and Walt put together. The first 5 lessons are all about what do you do before the interview. The next 5 are what do you do during the interview. The last 3 is how to shorten some advanced topics. We did lesson number 11 this week. Next week, we'll do number 12, difficult interview questions and how to cultivate confidence. So that'll be our topic next week, lesson 12. And this is what the YouTube channel looks like. Just scroll down till you see whatever session that you're looking for. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, you're welcome to join our mailing list. Just send an email to CareerUSA, +subscribe at groups.io. You won't be spammed, but what you will get is the topic of the day, the title of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. So just remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. All of our speakers are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everything I've done the last 14 years has just been to help you land your next great job. So thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you Thursday or Friday. If not, join us next Wednesday for lesson number 12.